Well, thank you so much, Tiff. Really excited to do this.
Yeah, me too.
I think I've been personally, as we were talking before, having a lot more fun with in-person podcasts. So I really appreciate you making the time to do this in person. But I think ultimately you have a fascinating story. I think the story of Magic Eden is fascinating. And maybe before we jump into all the awesome things that Magic Eden has been doing, starting with a little bit more of your background and how you got here today and how you got into crypto.
Wait, before I dive into me, we should talk about how we met.
Yes, this is true.
This is actually a great story.
This is really funny. It was in the New York Hacker House.
Yeah. So we were doing, we were at the New York Hacker House in January, and we were throwing an event at Loom Studios, which is actually the place where we did our first event, back November of 2021. And then you were there.
I was there.
And then?
But before that, I came up to you guys. I think you're presenting on the stage at the Hacker House. And I this was when I was just starting my podcast. I came up to you guys and I was like, please come on my podcast. And you're like, I don't know. Who is this guy? But come to our party. I was like, okay. And thank you for the party invite. Ultimately, I met you guys there, and then you guys were doing a podcast with Raj, and you're like, hey, can I borrow the stuff? I was like, yeah, of course. And then Jack came on the podcast, but no, it was funny. That was at the very beginning of this podcast journey. Yeah,
it was kind of crazy because I think it was at that event, you were actually talking about how, so there were two things. One was that, 3 days later, 2 days later, we did film a podcast with Raj. And I realized when we were talking that we had actually no way of getting the equipment. And I was like, oh, this dude does a podcast. Like, hey, maybe he can give us his equipment for the day, which you did. You delivered, and it was amazing. But then you also, on that evening, you shared about how you had actually known about Magic Eden for a really long time. And you had suggested it as an investment opportunity to someone, and they faded you on it.
Yeah, well, ultimately, it was an interesting conversation. Even backing up prior to this, I was at Tesla, and then I took some time off just to research blockchains. And then I was talking with a couple different people before starting Frictionless about potentially joining other companies. And ultimately, they were looking at different marketplaces. And I was like, Solana is popping off. Solana is really cool because ultimately it will scale. And I was like, this marketplace is came out of nowhere and they're doing really well. And so I essentially put together a bunch of metrics and presented to them. And ultimately they did invest in you guys. But it was interesting because I put together this deck essentially and showed them why I thought Magic Eden was doing so well, your page visits, the time spent on page. I was pulling random websites to pull all this, but
so they did invest.
They did invest. I think ultimately they were a little skeptical of Solana.
Oh, okay.
But now they did end up investing, but it was funny.
It was very prophetic that you had it kind of surfaced us when we were relatively unknown. So I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's our stories were it is funny. No, Magic Eden. I think I have just been super impressed with everything Magic Eden has done. I mean, even just starting from pulling those initial reports to just how fast the team executes. You guys are relentless, and I love that. And so, it's a funny story. But no, you caught me at the beginning of my podcast journey, and I really appreciate it now, sitting down, coming full circle, and doing this today.
Absolutely.
I would love, I really do think, the entire story is fascinating. And so maybe starting from the beginning, you
want my coming of age story?
Yes, yeah. How'd you get here?
I was born in Boston. No, I'm kidding. So, I've been at Magic Eden since basically day one. I think the company started on September 17th. And for the entire first year, I was religious about celebrating our birthday. So the date is seared in my mind. And I joined around early October. Mm-hmm. So basically, the genesis of Magic Eden, and I'll talk about me in a little bit, was that the original, it was like Jack had this idea that, hey, Solana would benefit from a better marketplace. And then he was childhood friends with this guy named Sydney, who's our CTO. They had originally met when they were like 15 or something like that, or maybe even younger. Mm-hmm. They were on their way to math tutoring in Australia.
That's funny.
Dr. He is the name of the math tutor. So they always kept in touch, and they were actually both in school to become attorneys at one point, and neither of them is an attorney now. But they always kept in touch. And so like when Jack had this idea, he hit up Sid. And then Sid brought in Rex, whose real name is Zhojie. And Zhojie was a past colleague of Sid's. So they worked together both at Uber and at Facebook, now Meta. And then I think Jack also met our COO, Joshin, at like a Bluestone coffee in San Francisco. Like I know this story so intimately. But anyway, basically the four of these people were like, all right, let's like do this thing. And in the beginning, we were all working part-time. So there we have four co-founders, Jack, Joshin, Sid, and Rex. And they were all working full-time on their other jobs. And then it wasn't until like Lisbon, say like November, so around 2 months after, that we all decided to quit. And by that time, like I was there, maybe we had basically around 8 to 15 people max by that point.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't until we were actually, it was actually crazy because Magic Eden, before the bear one like came, we were actually profitable from like a very, very early stage. Mm-hmm. And then we decided to kind of like go all in. So in the beginning, we were all anonymous. So like Jack was like Leo and like Joshin was Zed and Sid was something.
That was the trend at the time.
Yeah. And I was Theophana. Yeah. And then I think the first person we hired was Igor, whose name is, most people actually know him by Chart for Monkey. We found him off Discord, and he was actually kind of my first boss. He was running marketing first, and then it became me.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of like the OG story. And I guess kind of going to me, I stumbled upon Magic Eden pretty spontaneously, really. Like I was working in hospitality. So my career spans, like in retrospect, none of it makes any sense, but I went from management consulting to UX design. And then I went into hospitality for like 6 years, and then I landed up in Magic Eden. So I always joke that I went from like Web 0 to Web 3. But yeah, I was actually planning on taking a year off, and like didn't actually want to work and wanted to make it as like a freelance writer. And then 3 days after I resigned from my job, I got roped in by Katie, who's actually she's like leading product marketing right now for the creator side, as well as like overseeing Launchpad marketing. But she basically wrote me in, and then I went from thinking I wasn't going to work for a year to working harder than I've ever worked before.
I was about to say, you did a complete 180 on that.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So
interesting. No, it's I think, I mean, you and I have the kind of hospitality in common. My first job outside of university was working in product at Expedia Group.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What product did you manage?
So I worked on Hotwire, where ultimately
HOTWIRE. Hotwire.com.
That's too funny. Oh my God.
It's like seared into the back of my mind.
Yeah, it's sketchy. It worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worked on Hotwire. And then I did that for a year before joining Tesla. But that's super funny. So what ultimately, were you just tired of kind of the travel industry and wanted to pursue like writing full time?
To be honest, so I worked at Marriott for like almost maybe over 6 years, and the whole story of how I even got to hospitality was super weird too. So I was working in UX design. I was at a small shop in Chicago called Gravity Tank, and they were eventually bought by Salesforce into their innovation arm. And I really wanted to work in Asia because I grew up in Taipei.
Yeah.
So I'm Taiwanese, and I think a lot of like Asian Americans feel this existential crisis at some point. They're like, who am I? Like, am I Asian or am I American? Like, what's my identity? And for me, because I grew up in Taipei, I had this like really, really like, deep desire to work in Asia. And I didn't care what I did, right? Like, and so I read about Marriott, like International's CMO. Her name is Peggy Fang Ro. So read about her. And then I was like, oh, I would love to work for her. So I just slid in her DMs on LinkedIn,
Really?
Which is how I got my job at Gravity Tank too. Like
Amazing.
just sliding in DMs all day long. And so she actually responded. And so then if you remember, Marriott bought Starwood in 2016. And all of a sudden they needed an extra pair of hands in Asia Pacific. And so we started talking, and she was the CMO in Asia Pacific. She referred me to the COO, and I basically worked for our chief operations services officer for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really cool. So the job was based in Hong Kong. So I lived in Hong Kong and then traveled to like a bunch of different hotels. I think I've walked probably over 100 hotels.
Really?
Yeah, pretty cool. And then I ended my time. I was working in operations, and then I went to brand because I wanted to do something more creative. Ended my time leading marketing for the non-luxury portfolio. And then for personal reasons, I was actually like trying to date. I had a long distance relationship with someone, and I was trying to like date him. And so I moved to the States, and it was during the pandemic. So I was like, all right, I'll find Marriott, like maybe they'll give me a transfer. And so I took a transfer offer to work remotely on the West Coast in like the customer experience design team, which I didn't really understand what that meant. But I was like, oh, I don't know, like came from UX design, I'll figure it out. And long story short, I just like felt super disconnected. And, I'd spent the last, half a decade feeling super tangible, and the results that I drove are really, I could see it, right? Hospitality is one of those things where the gratification is nearly instant because you are so connected to the end user. So I was running all these like big brand campaigns and activations, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden I was working remotely, and I think they put me on a project about like translating websites, and I just like couldn't fucking handle it. And so I ended up quitting. And at the time so a side passion of mine has always been writing. I've really enjoyed writing. And I actually spent most of 2021 trying to work through a 40-page manuscript. So there's so much context. So if people remember, like in March of 2021, like there was like a lot of anti-Asian sentiment that was happening in the US.
Yeah.
And I was feeling very alone, and like, I was living in Asia. I really missed being in Hong Kong. So I started actually interviewing my mom and like asking her stories about like how she grew up, because I wanted to feel like a little more rooted while being in the States. And then the stories were really fascinating. Like my mom is a survivor of like the Cultural Revolution and all this crazy shit in China. It's actually pretty wild. And then I was like, oh, I should try to like, publish these stories or whatever. So I ended up getting into writing programs across like publishers in Portland and multidisciplinary Asian American arts organizations in New York and San Francisco. So I like pounded out all these different writing programs, and I was like, oh, like feeling so bullish, like I'm gonna quit my job and just write. And I even like lined up a couple different like contract deals for myself to keep myself alive. Like I calculated, I was like, if I just make $4,000 a month, like I'll be fine. And so I got the courage after over half a decade to like quit my job at Marriott. And then 3 days later, Katie called and was like, I called her because I was in San Francisco at the time. And I was like, hey, I just like finally quit my job. Like take me out for a drink. And she was like, I'm actually in Colorado, but we're building this little thing called Magic Eden.
Oh my God.
And then I was curious. So like my frame of mind was like, I really want to write.
Yeah.
Right. But like the life of a writer is really miserable because you make like 30 cents a word, and the grind is really hard. You try to get a MFA, and who knows if you'll ever make the money back after what you paid for it. And there's so many institutions that are surrounding like how writers are brought to life. Right. So I was like, maybe if I do NFTs, I can like find a way of monetizing my writing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just like write some blog posts for you guys. So the original job offer was to write blog posts, $250 per blog post. And then I was working, I wrote like the first blog post I wrote was about Launchpad. And then after that, I was like, why don't I just like lead marketing for you guys? And then they were like, yeah, okay, let's just do it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's wild. No, I think, I mean, one, it's extremely hard to actually take the jump and the leap to like do something new. And so I always applaud people that are able to do that, because at the time it is very scary. Like you run the math, you're like, how much money do I need to survive? And like to go forward, like how difficult is this going to be for me? And you're running all those calculations. And then ultimately once you do it, you're like, all right, I've done it now. Like it's time to execute. But it's in some sense kind of comical that after you did all that like mental work and were prepping yourself, a couple of days later ended up working for Magic Eden.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And I think like, I don't regret it at all. You know, I think Magic Eden for me has been such a blessing, because I remember when I was job hunting, and like one of the reasons I was like, maybe I'll just quit was like, after you work in hospitality for so long, people look at your resume and they're like, okay, she's a hotel person.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to break out of that. And I remember I went to a career counselor at one point. She had this gridded piece of paper. And she was like, I was like telling her, oh, I want to like, you know, kind of want to work in entertainment, or I want to work in media. And in many ways, like Magic Eden is kind of a media company, considering we have all these like digital content, right? Mm-hmm. But besides the point, I was like, I really want to work in media. I like want to do something. I do marketing. And she was like, she had this gridded piece of paper. She was like, well, you're in this square and you're trying to get to like another square like over there, but you need to go in order, and you can only go from like, you know, this square to that square. And so I remember she was like sending me job recommendations for like taking marketing positions, but they were demotions. And yeah, you know, there just weren't a lot of people in my court that were just like, you can do it, or like, you know, I believe I'll take a chance on you. So I was like, fuck all of this. Like, I'll just quit. And yeah, I'm super grateful to the team for taking a chance on me, because I do feel like Magic Eden has stretched me to my absolute maximum, like bandwidth and stress levels, but also potential. I do feel like it feels very boundless. I'm glad to have the chance to try.
No, I've ultimately kind of gone through a similar thing where I was like, all right, what do I do now? And then, it's very hard to find people in your corner, especially when you're trying to make a big jump or like do something totally different. Everybody likes to put you in boxes, and you're like, stay in your box. And like, if you're not in this box, like people like mentally have a very hard time of like being like, all right, like they have this experience. They say they can do it, but like, I haven't seen it. So like, it doesn't make sense, and like, just go away. And so I'm extremely happy that ultimately you found something in Magic Eden, and you have worked out so well, because it's extremely hard to do that. And I think now, like, it's led you down this path, which is fascinating in itself. I think, taking those jumps is hard. And then when you do take the jump and where it leads you, I mean, in this case, it's a kind of a pretty magical story.
Magical. Yeah. So Magic Eden right now, we have like over 100 people. We have like 11 million monthly unique sessions. We're one of the largest apps in crypto, period, or shall I say DApp. And yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's amazing. No, I mean, I think crypto had a meteoric rise, but Magic Eden within that, I mean, ultimately, as you said, was kind of profitable from like day one, which is also unique in the crypto space, to be making money. But I think, I mean, Magic Eden, as we were talking earlier, I think one of the things that has just continuously impressed me is your guys' relentless like work ethic. And as it is extremely hard just knowing working super long hours at Tesla, it's demanding and draining, and exhausting and can push you a lot, but you do grow a lot. And so I would love to kind of dive deep into kind of some of your experience from joining in that October timeframe to today. What were some of the kind of, because when you started, Magic Eden, as we talked about, was relatively unknown. Investors were still trying to figure out Solana and what Magic Eden was. And then fast forward 6-9 months, a year later, Magic Eden is a unicorn. So what were some of like the biggest learning lessons from this past year?
Oh, so much. Oh, so much to talk about. I think there are different stages of Magic Eden as it relates to marketing specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, marketing was equal Twitter. So I was a social media manager, right? And I think the reasons why, so at the time there was an incumbent, right, on Solana. There's another marketplace. And our job was to displace that volume. And we did that through a lot of viral marketing. So there were things that we understood from the very beginning that our competitors didn't, which is number one, the website should reflect the hottest thing that's happening in the ecosystem. So people go to it as a portal for discovery.
Yeah.
And even until very recently, like I think a lot of marketplaces either were displaying stuff on the front page that were not super relevant, or it was just a list of popular collections. But we always had a carousel and many different carousels from day one. The second thing was people weren't willing to eat the glass of like doing viral marketing, but at every collection level. So, getting every time, if you remember on Solana, there was a meta before instant listings occurred where you would wait until the mint finished and then you would list all the secondary collections at once. But I remember we would get every collection to put our link in their bio, and we would have them tweet that Magic Eden was their preferred secondary marketplace, and doing this over and over and over again. And back in those days, it was a matter of if you got the hot collection of the day, you would get majority market share, and if you didn't, then like you wouldn't get market share, period. And so nailing every single launch. I remember back in the day, like Katie felt super guilty one day because she like didn't catch a launch. I can't remember the name of it, But that was kind of chapter one of marketing at Magic Eden, which was like, can you just grind super hard and like go the extra mile that nobody else is willing to do? And it was by Lisbon that I think we reached like over 50% market share.
That was quick then.
2 months.
I mean, yeah. 2 months.
It's also helped that Solana was like popping off. So it was just a matter of catching the collections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, and I'm making this up on the spot, like I think chapter 2 marketing of Magic Eden. So in the beginning, it was just like ship product really, really fast and do a lot of viral marketing. And then chapter 2 was really like, okay, there are like kind of controversies that are going to come up. So in January, because there were so many, if you remember, Solana was known as a derivative chain.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, ultimately it was super controversial. I remember even to like use Solana at that point in time, it was still very much like the ETH is the only smart contract platform. And if you use any others, it's like forbidden.
Yeah, exactly. So then came derivative season, where there were a lot of collections that imitated Ethereum collections. Mm-hmm. But there was like, I don't want to name them, but basically you had like different types of punks that were related to different ethnicities, or there's a very famous ape on ETH, and there was a version of that on Solana. Anyway, so then we found ourselves in hairier issues where it was like, oh, well, this is not a product decision, it's an ethical and business decision, right? And so do you constrain the marketplace and say, okay, only, verifiable collections are able to be launched, or do you allow for openness and like anything to be launched, right? And then create different ways of showing which collections are more bona fide, right? And so then it was like, we actually have to think about stuff like this, and how do you navigate, and how do you make decisions?
Yeah.
And then I think like there were other challenges along the way. So we started, in the beginning it was just like, how do we make people happy? And then after that it became like, how do we make more principled decisions? Mm-hmm. And like, what do we actually stand for? And that has basically been something that we continue to to try our best at, knowing that the market moves so quickly that your like problem statement constantly changes. So it's really hard to actually nail down like, okay, how to actually be consistent in spite of all of these different, whether it's competitive threats, like dynamics that you can't foresee, you know, it's really hard to consistently promise anything, right? Yeah. But anyway, so I think like chapter 2 is really like us learning, okay, we have to like make decisions more methodically. And then after that, I'd say like chapter 3 is like, you know, how do you actually manage and scale a marketing organization that can take on like a increasing volume of work, right? So like every role within marketing has become more complex over time. And it's not a matter of just like, you know, tactically pushing out stuff. Like we hired from the community very, very intentionally in the beginning. And now marketing is so complex that everybody's job requires them to figure out how to scale. So for example, like, you know, when we did Launchpad marketing, right? So we promote, you know, projects that we launch on our platform. Mm-hmm. Before it was just a matter of copy pasting tweets. And now every person has to be like a strategic marketing consultant to a project as we bring bigger brands into the space. So I'd say like, then it was about figuring out how we can train the team and so they can step up and then they can handle these types of really difficult questions. And then anyway, just like everything has gotten way more complex over time. And yeah, I think I just can't even imagine this is what I would be doing.
It is wild. I mean, I think a lot of crypto today, in my point of view, is still trying to find like product market fit. And I think one of the beautiful things of Magic Eden, of iterating quickly, combined with that viral marketing initially, you guys found product market fit. And that is still something that a lot of teams are still searching for. And so you guys, like the team more broadly, are experiencing problems that I would say a lot of like future people in crypto are, but kind of leading the way. And so like, yeah, like the ethics and making like all these decisions, even just like outside of like just the core product, that is challenging and something that like a lot of these other teams haven't even got to because they're still at the product level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hard because especially in the position we are now, like every decision is kind of viewed with scrutiny mm-hmm. and at least very close attention, if I'm more optimistic. Yeah, it's really, really difficult to make sure you message things the right way or even just approach problems in a way that the community can understand.
Yeah. And yeah. I think, I mean, also a unique thing specific to crypto is that it is so community driven. Could you maybe talk about some of the differences of like managing relationships with like brands and your like Web 2 job versus Web 3 and like that community aspect? Because that is like a very unique thing to crypto.
Yeah, it's super intense. And this is actually where the hospitality kind of comes in and is helpful. I can't imagine anybody being this passionate about any marketplace. Yeah. Like, I was actually thinking, like, do people feel this way about eBay? You know, it's just so intense. Or any consumer app. Like, do people feel this way about Spotify? I don't know. I think it's really hard to build a brand in Web3 because, especially on Solana, it feels. And not to just talk about Solana, we're on multiple chains. We're on ETH, and we're going to enter Polygon. Like actually launch it this like very soon. I do think a lot of the ethos around Web3 sometimes just conflicts with business growth. Period. Because sometimes there's this attitude of like WAGMI. It's just so naive. Yeah. Honestly, they're just like, yeah, everyone's going to help each other. And like, no, it's, you know, especially with marketplaces, this is a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I do feel like yeah, it's really hard to bring the community along for a ride where they see things in a very specific way, and it's hard to share the bigger vision of what we're trying to do. For example, you know, there was a lot of controversy about different types of features, and people were like, well, why didn't you partner with other players to build those features? But if those features are actually integral to the marketplace experience, then Magic Eden actually has every right to build those features, right? Conversely, like, you know, people have been critical about like Launchpad and the quality of projects. But if you think about it, like, so 70% of businesses fail, right? Just in general. 70% of Launchpad projects, you know, I think we looked at the analysis of what's the number of Launchpad projects that are above min price after like we launched them, and it's around like 30%. So it's really not that like, and people are like, oh, well, Magic Eden like doesn't pick projects carefully. No, dude, it's just because most of them are not going to survive, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to like, I do think some of the assumptions and expectations placed on us are like a little coming from a very idealistic point of view. Like there's a lot of idealism in Web3. And when you actually talk about results, it's hard to kind of reconcile those two things.
Yeah. And to me, ultimately, that kind of like goes back to like kind of like taking the jump or like being in the arena. And there's definitely a lot of commentators. And I think that's fine. I do think there should be everybody's voice should be heard in some sense. But going back to like the business aspect, I think it's great that like people can compete. I mean, if someone does have a superior product or a different standard or different marketplace, different DApp, that is substantially better than someone else's, like that should win. It should, or people should gravitate towards that if it actually provides more value. And so I think today, a lot of it's just so early, and it's great in the sense that the community is so passionate, but there's, in the grand scheme of things, still like very few users compared to like TikTok or Instagram, YouTube. And so I think everybody's voice is a little bit amplified. But I think at the end of the day, as you said, like everybody's trying to work towards a similar thing, and everybody's just trying different things to get there.
Yeah. I think right now we live in like this bubble of crypto Twitter, and like in the long term, if NFTs are really accessible to everyone, it shouldn't just be a matter of who's the most active on Twitter, right? You should have users that are not even on Twitter. Yeah. But like that's the long term that I'm looking at, right? Yeah. So when people get upset about like really small things, yeah, I'm less worried about it these days.
Yeah. Maybe shifting a little bit, how has Magic Eden's like vision or goal evolved over time, and like what are some things that you're excited about, either from like the creator standpoint or gaming in the future?
Yeah, I think most NFT marketplaces feel really transactional, and that's one of the things that we're trying to innovate on. So for example, like the earliest signs of that were the drop calendar, right? Where you can upvote different drops. And that is a social feature, but there's intention behind it instead of just copy pasting Instagram onto the marketplace, right? It's alpha driven. So different social insights can actually help you make decisions. And that was why also with our carousels, if you look at the bottom one on the homepage, it says friends are watching. So I think one of the things that we're working on is creating more social experiences and having those insights that be relevant to the user. And when you say social, it's not necessarily between Magic Eden and the collector. It's really creating pathways for collectors to like interact with each other, and then to create pathways for the creator to interact with the collector. So this upcoming week, and maybe by the time this is out, we're actually launching a loyalty program called Magic Eden Rewards. And what that is every profile, first of all, you'll be able to collapse all your wallets into one profile, and that represents a master view of your trade activity. And this is like the first time Logan's actually hearing about this. And so imagine that you are able to have more rewards and fee discounts based on your total trade activity. So that way we are actually doing right by our users, right? And giving the ones who are transacting the most fewer fees. And then when it comes to rewards, what are those rewards? Those rewards can come in different flavors. They can come from the like partners and ecosystems, whether those are different apps or, I think Asset Dash is an example of one that we'll partner with. So they offer discounts to IRL things. Like they have a discount to Airbnb, for example, that you can give through our rewards hub. But it also allows for an opportunity for creators to actually reach collectors. So for example, say like if a blue chip collection wants to give a bunch of gift boxes, and then some of those gift boxes have rare NFTs, and they can disperse those gift boxes to the rewards hub, right? So we are creating pathways that are meaningful, right? Social experiences, but they're meaningful. So that's like kind of one really big thing that we're working on. I think we kind of segment our business into kind of the creator side and then the collector side. So what I just talked about is one of the things we're working on the collector side. On the creator side, I think there's like a lot of ways that we can help creators target their audiences more effectively, because most of the trade volume that's happening on Solana is actually via Magic Eden, and actually provide news and provide incentives for collectors. So one thing that you can see on our homepage now is we have this thing called creator announcements, and we're literally manually doing it.
Really?
We have like this giant Google sheet of like all the announcements we're uploading by day, but eventually that will become self-serve. So then different creators can share different pieces of news, whereas before you had like to dig through Discord and find the right messages across your like 40 Discords. That's like the very, very initial stage of something that could be much greater. So allowing creators to encourage collectors to upload content or maybe complete a certain set of tasks, right? And creating like a way. Think about where they can find insights, where they can reward certain collectors, where they can scale different types of experiences that are revealed via Magic Eden. So Magic Eden feels like a tool for them rather than just their marketplace. Yeah. And then for everyone, the marketplace is no longer just this transactional layer, but it's this like full journey of like discovery through transaction and engagement is the thing that we're trying to unlock.
That's amazing. Yeah. Marketplaces today are very, as you said, like kind of transactional, and so I think it's super fascinating. Ultimately, again, like what I've been continuously impressed by is just like Magic Eden does take a lot of feedback from the community, but ultimately your rate of iteration is extremely high. And by being able to include some of these social components, it's going to be fascinating to see how it turns out. Have you guys announced that you're doing the royalties or the loyalty program?
Royalties and loyalties, they match. Speaking of royalties, we actually we're protecting them now on Magic Eden for all new collections that are using a protocol that we created called Open Creator Protocol. It is not meant to be a defensive play and block anybody out. We just wanted to deliver something to market quickly because people have been waiting for like 2 months. Yeah. But no, we have not announced the loyalty program. That's going to be this upcoming week.
Nice.
But yeah, you've mentioned this a couple times now, and it is true. I think, if you had to stack all the marketplaces side by side and say like, well, why is Magic Eden special? To me, it's definitely our product velocity. Like we are just animals. Like we ship so fast. It's actually insane. I just hired on somebody who used to run product marketing at TikTok, worked at Meta, and she was like, I've never seen like this pace of work is like unprecedented. Yeah. And I didn't even know that my own expectations are like kind of insane because I've never worked in tech, right? And I was telling her how like, just get someone to write a Twitter thread and, we'll push it out tomorrow. And she was like, what? Like, I was like, most marketing tasks actually take less than 24 hours. You make a graphic, push out a thread. The only thing that really requires lead time is like when you work with creators to roll out a program or develop high fidelity creative. And this was like mind blowing to her.
That's funny.
But yeah, we're animals.
It's extremely impressive. I mean, I think a lot of people can get bogged down, especially in companies with like day-to-day decisions, and forget like at the end of the day, a lot of those decisions, they do matter, but the customer do not see that decision-making process, and all they see is like what they interact with. And I think by continuously changing, updating, pushing forward, and like having that be reflected on the customer standpoint is extremely important. And I don't think enough companies take this approach or have the willpower that Magic Eden has ultimately put forth. I don't think it's by accident Magic Eden is where it is today.
Thanks. Yeah, in the beginning, it was just like, okay, so like one of the earliest sources of FUD that we got was like, oh, like, why does this marketplace have a launch pad? Isn't that a conflict of interest because you're promoting different projects? And then the common consensus was like, yeah, Magic Eden, your secondary marketplace is great, but like, just let go of the launch pad. Just don't do that. Like, stop that. And even though, you know, there were launches that didn't go well, like Balloonsville, Legion Town, you know, everybody knows, right? Obviously, it's like a really important model that now, I mean, even the biggest NFT marketplace has a launchpad now, right? Like we were like the first on Solana to debut that model. And I think it's incredibly important and meaningful to have primaries and secondaries connected together. And so, yeah, back to the point of like, if we listened to everything the community was saying, we would not have been able to grow.
Yeah.
And yeah, like if you do everything the community wants, they'll just like, you know, it's the things that they want: a token, they want fee discounts, and, you know, they want free shit, right? But it's really up to you to frame up like, okay, what are the underlying values of what they're seeking? And then how do you deliver that in like a more powerful experience?
Exactly.
And having that insight and actually like not just always relenting is, I think, one of the things that makes us really iconic. Yeah, I
mean, going back even to your journey initially where you're like wanted to go from one industry to another, I'd say more broadly, like people just don't like change. And whether it's a job change or a big product change or going from a BlackBerry with keyboard to an iPhone that doesn't have a keyboard, people kind of like staying in their lane ultimately, and then it does take time for people to get adjusted to the new thing. No, but it has been impressive, ultimately, being able to understand the core thing that the community wants or would like to, listening to the feedback, and then making those product updates. And it's not always like everybody's going to be perfect, but going back to like iterating fast, like if you can continue to iterate, most likely you'll end up at a better spot than others quicker.
Yeah, I think so. Like we're really not afraid of just making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. It's part of the process.
Yeah. And then it's like you have to think about how to create a brand for that, you know? So I think that was also a learning journey for me, where if you actually look at the ways that we've described ourselves, it's kind of evolved over time. So at one point, we were really proud of how community-centric we were. And I'm still proud of that, right? But we called ourselves a community-oriented marketplace. But we don't really call ourselves that anymore, not because we don't care about the community, but it's because, like, that is not our compass. Our compass is delivering the best marketplace and platform experience that's going to onboard a whole new journey, a whole new type and different categories of creators and collectors. And we can't be kind of constrained to the thoughts of crypto Twitter.
Continuing forth on like kind of that social dynamic, like how, I guess, we are kind of in the small echo Twitter chamber. How, by like building these new products, do you envision like bringing, I think the next bull run ultimately will be pulled in by more users.
Oh yeah.
So how are you kind of trying to create these projects so it's not just Twitter users, it's like the everyday person or maybe skeptic of NFT to try out kind of a bridging out into like the Web3 creator ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of big brands are watching and thinking like, well, what's our use case for NFTs? And one of the biggest use cases is actually loyalty. The problem is that there's no way to connect the holders of an NFT to the entire system that these companies have created for their loyalty programs. Like those systems right now are completely disparate, right? How do you put somebody's wallet address when your other system has like their name and their email and whatever. But I think as we create that kind of infrastructure, the loyalty program in particular is just showing how you can use NFTs to engage audiences in a very novel and untraditional way. So I think like the reason why all these brands are looking at is because they're like, oh, well, this is like this could be like really how communities are built and formed and mobilized. And I want a piece of that. So if Magic Eden can help deliver that, then I think that's like super meaningful. How we do it and like how the brands we work with can actually engage those communities over time is like another question, and how that like plugs into their systems. But ultimately I think for the creator side, it's really that Magic Eden is this conduit for you to engage with the right people at the right time in the right way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm really excited ultimately for more users. It's kind of comical to me today when I like pull up not like any specific application, but just like ecosystems more broadly and seeing their like lifetime users. It's still very small, but I'm optimistic now that the infrastructure, just like the core protocols, are getting to a point where they can actually support more users, and then applications built on top of them will be able to onboard them as well. Because, I mean, with Solana specifically, I mean, we've seen it going down, and that like affects you guys directly.
Yeah, for sure.
And so ultimately having more stability, essentially having, in some sense, the Web2 analogy, like faster internet or faster speeds, transaction speeds, or more transactions, just being able to onboard more users. But no, it's an interesting journey. It's been a crazy year for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired. Yeah. How are you doing?
Good. No, I mean, I try to go outside more now. It's nice. We're currently in Miami, so nice to be outside and walk. I think ultimately, as you mentioned earlier, Twitter or crypto in the ecosystem is much broader than specifically Twitter. And I think because majority of kind of conversations in our industry happen there, we're glued to Twitter and our screens. And obviously that's not even our main job. That's like in addition to just to keep up with all the craziness that's going on. And so by being able to step away or realize that's not the entire ecosystem has been beneficial, and being able to kind of stop and ultimately just take a break for a little time, I think is important. Yesterday, I played pickleball and didn't look at my computer, and it was super refreshing.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've been like carving out time to just, kind of exist outside of Magic Eden too.
Yeah. That's important. Ultimately, I think when you do work, it's not like your brain is constantly in overdrive. Like you can like sit down and process things. And so I think ultimately by stepping back, it allows us to do a better job just in our day to day.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
it is hard. Crypto, I think just because the meteoric rise of blockchain and crypto more broadly, it has put everybody on like edge, and it's kind of in the last couple of years kind of money falling from the sky in some sense, that everybody was just running around with buckets trying to like catch their money. And so now that things are slowing down, people have a little bit of time to breathe. I think honestly it's good for the industry to like focus on themselves personally, like mentally and physically, and then ultimately kind of reassess like what are we building? Why is it important? And what are we ultimately doing this for? And so, no, I think it's awesome that, I mean, you've obviously yourself and Magic Eden have been pushed extremely hard and had a lot of success for that. But now ultimately being able to step back, reflect on it, even like conversations like this, we were talking, and I don't think we realize how crazy all this is. And like going from a idea to a product to $1 billion company in a year, leading that effort is astounding. And so in some sense, I like doing these podcasts just to be able to kind of document this journey, because we are spearheading a new industry, and I'm just appreciative to be a part of it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's pretty wild that we created this thing in a year, and I think there's just so much endurance on the team that I'm super impressed with. Like, and it's hard too, right? As a company that has over 100 people, to figure out how to all work together and how to deliver. And like internally, there's still a lot of stuff that we could do better, right? And syncing the way engineering works with marketing, or like product works with engineering. And like there's so much stuff to sort through. But the fact that we haven't lost that pace is like incredible to me, right? And that, you know, Sid, our CTO, and I are very similar in one way, in that we joke that we're both apes, right? So you imagine like all the stuff that we build, maybe it's not perfect, but we ship it and we try it.
Yeah.
And on the marketing side, like, hey, maybe the images that we launch with, we don't have like the most beautiful creative, but like it's done, we slapped something on it and like we tried it. And that constant spirit of experimentation is something that's very, very like native to Magic Eden. And yeah, I mean, we want to be like that one powerful app that crosses chains, that makes people think outside of the framework of a chain, right? And once there are really powerful consumer experiences, then people will come, right?
Ultimately, I would love to get to the point where people don't know essentially what chain they're on, but they're just using the product, and the product is so easy that ultimately they don't know that they're even using a blockchain in some sense, but they get that functionality.
Yeah.
I like the vision.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
I guess ultimately, how I think, even though our industry is crazy, it is stressful. We work very hard. People, even after recent events with kind of FTX and the bear market, people still want to get involved in Web3, crypto, or the creator economy. What would your advice be to individuals that are looking to get into the ecosystem, especially with your journey, ultimately going from one industry to another? In your firsthand experience, what would your advice be to others wanting to get involved?
Just how to join this space in particular. Like, okay, if I think about how I would have given myself advice like a year ago, number one is to like pick the right team. It's the team over everything. And in the toughest moments at Magic Eden, it's the team that has kept me here, because I think by and large, we're not very ego-driven, the co-founders especially, and then that permeates through the rest of the team. And we're just super, super persistent and able to get stuff done. And it's like, who can you imagine training yourself to for the next 5 years? Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, can you like survive not just an airport lounge test, but like, can you really be in the same room as this guy for the next 5 years? Besides that, I'd say like, kind of figure out what you can bring to the table, because Web3 is so undefined, and this is a space where boxes actually don't exist. And so a lot of my experience from hospitality actually lent itself well to Web3 in ways that I couldn't possibly foresee, right? And I was kind of like willing to try. So I hosted Twitter Spaces every day for like, the first 2 months, right? And that is an act of hospitality and connection. And being able to always connect with people was actually what got Magic Eden through some of the toughest like periods, right? So, you know, what is your special sauce and what can you do? And then I'd say like the economy around NFTs is still relatively informal, right? And so whether or not you have like a full-time job or you're just helping out different people, like building a portfolio is like so critical in Web3 because people want to know what you can deliver. So like just engaging with people and being willing to connect and put some, not being afraid of putting something in the world is probably like the most critical. So for example, like I remember this woman like wanted to work for us as a designer, and ultimately we didn't hire her, but we talked to her. She made a resume that looked like the Magic Eden site. Like it used all of our UI, and I was like, oh my God, this is like brilliant. And yeah, I think this is just a space that it really favors the bold. Like fortune favors the bold, but especially in Web3. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. What would you say? I feel like my answers are kind of generic.
No, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it is a little challenging, especially if you're not on Twitter. Like if someone tells me they're in crypto but not on Twitter, I'm like, I don't know if I believe you. But yeah, I would definitely echo. I mean, just contributing. I mean, me personally, I felt like I wasn't as good at the community side as you. I was really interested in the tech, and I didn't know how to get in, like intertwine with the community. And so I decided to like buy this podcast stuff too, as like my way. But I think ultimately it leads back to what you said is like contributing, on like the engineering side, like writing code, or community side, hosting those spaces, getting involved, helping NFT projects, helping dApps tell their story. I think storytelling is extremely important. I guess like this is a form of storytelling, but yeah, ultimately just getting involved in some shape or form. And then eventually, if you're persistent, I think doors will ultimately open up. And because the industry, I think a lot of people think the industry is kind of locked down today, or like not malleable. And it's extremely, extremely early, just in terms of users, and I think ultimately what the space will become. And so if you can contribute, you'll definitely have a like very long lasting career.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think it's kind of funny, but I actually joined Magic Eden with like, most of my resume was not marketing, you know, but I was just willing to try.
Yeah.
And yeah, I obviously like, I was also very lucky, but yeah, I think people see Web3 as just really intimidating sometimes, but it really is like just a matter of being bold enough to reach out to people. Like I was trying to like reach out to this game on Polygon yesterday, and so what I did, I like couldn't, like they weren't replying to my Twitter DMs, and so I just on Telegram I like searched for the game,
yeah,
and then I found their mod. And I just like messaged their mod, and then the mod responded.
Really?
Like you just have to think of this shit.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to earlier in the conversation, you were saying how you got some of your jobs from DMs. I think now the interesting thing for me being in this position and learning people's stories, how people and kind of going after what they want, and a lot of them through like cold emails or DMs.
Emails? What's an email? I'm kidding.
But like pursuing what you want, I think is very, very empowering. And a lot of people are afraid to take that first step. But by shooting your shot and being creative, it will get you very far.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this delicate balance. It's like, yeah, be creative and shoot your shot, but do it in a way that's like authentic and doesn't ever compromise your credibility, because that's all you have at the end of the day. And I think, yeah, there are a lot of, especially in marketing, for me, like I have to be really, really careful because people tend to oversell themselves. But yeah, I think when I find someone who is able to be really thoughtful and also is super ambitious and really risk risk loving, like that is amazing. It's like the best combination.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really do think your journey and Magic Eden's journey, how those are intertwined, how you both have risen very quickly are fascinating. And so I truly appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chat and learn from you, and ultimately the experiences of this past year, because it's not normal. You guys have done extremely impressive things. You personally are extremely impressive. The viral marketing ideas.
You're very impressive, Logan.
It's hard to do. And so, I appreciate what you do for the communities and what you do for Magic Eden. Maybe to wrap up the conversation, what are some things that you're excited for, maybe on like the creator or NFT side for like 2023? What are you excited on like the Magic Eden front for 2023, and then like crypto more broadly?
Okay, so yeah, on the creator and collector side, I mean, there's like a really long roadmap, and I'm like not exactly sure what I can or can't say.
Share the alpha.
The alpha. I think I'll just say on the creator side, I'll just stick to the creator side. The Creator Hub right now is a very tactical experience where you just list a collection. And I think creators who want to launch projects on Magic Eden will be able to self-serve in a very different way than exists today. So
I like it.
Yeah.
Just a couple sprinkles.
And it will not feel like Magic Eden is this ivory fortress that you only use for your secondary marketplace. Like, Magic Eden will just be yours for you to like do what you need to do to reach like all the users that use Magic Eden. So that's super exciting. What am I excited about for Magic Eden? I think I'm really excited specifically for the marketing team. I'll just talk about my team. We have like 11 people right now, and being able to like grow the team to take on the scope and complexity of challenges is something that fills me with both dread as well as excitement.
Yep.
It's fucking hard, man. Like, it's like trying to get like an ex-community manager to grok what product marketing is. It's just really hard, but I'm really excited to see that growth trajectory for the team. And I'm excited to see how we're going to get like out of the bear, you know?
Yep.
Like, it feels really hard right now.
Yeah. It feels bad.
Yeah. Like, and I remember there were a lot of people who joined Magic Eden when everything went up. Like, you know, I was like, you guys are not ready for down season.
Yeah.
But now we're in down season, and I think the team is becoming very resilient. So that's good to see. And I'm excited for them to continue to grow and develop. Crypto more broadly, I'm ready for like the on-ramps to be less difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think you can see innovations with, you know, stuff like Cupcake is a protocol that was developed by B&J Studios that allows for people to like claim NFTs or SFTs with the tap of a phone. Like, those are really cool use cases that I think NFTs could be both the front end facing, you know, community-led creator like experience that we know today, but also there's just so much infrastructure. Like, NFTs can be the back-end verification of luxury goods or any good, right?
Yeah.
And for us to kind of explore those types of use cases would be really cool. And to have that integrate with real life. Like, in general, just want space to feel less like we're floating in the ether by ourselves and more like this is relevant for everyday living. That's, what I'm excited about.
I love it. Well,
what about you? What's just the one thing you're excited about in general?
in crypto, I really want more users. I mean, I love NFTs for the fact, I got into crypto in 2017, kind of during that bull market, and kept with it through the bear market, ultimately, which allowed me to be in the spot today. But I think one thing that caught a lot of people off guard were NFTs, but I am very appreciative of NFTs for what they have done for crypto more broadly in terms of user adoption
And culture creation.
and culture. Yeah, they're really, I mean, they're creating a new culture, which is fascinating. And so watching that culture, like internet native culture, develop through NFTs and seeing that proliferate into, I mean, society, and it took culture by storm. And just what it did for the user adoption, I was surprised. But to answer your question, I'm very excited for more users. I think today we have kind of been handicapped by a lot of the infrastructure, just the core protocols, unfortunately. But I think now there exists a clear path for that infrastructure to scale. And I'm very excited for application engineers to not have to focus on protocols and just focus on your core product. And if you scale, don't worry about it. Like, the protocol will support it. And so by having those different levels of abstractions, I think application engineers will build better apps, and ultimately that will result in more users. So I'm excited for users. I want to get out of like the circular kind of token go up or like type. And I think the truly only way to do that is like get actual users and user adoption. And so I'm excited for that.
Yeah. And I'm just so excited we got out of this royalty hell, to be honest, because like Magic Eden is a deeply creator-centric business, and we never wanted to be in this, really shitty
a lot of hard choices.
Yeah, really hard choices. And happy that we can now respect royalties on Magic Eden, because ultimately what you're talking about, like culture creation, right? Like NFTs are the best vehicle for creating subcultures on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And, when people just want to be involved for the love of self-expression, like that simplistic of a desire, that's ultimately what's going to like bring people in, right? Not that like the person who doesn't really understand chains or, whatever. It'll just be this cool thing that they can use to show people who they are.
Yeah.
I'm excited to support creators and bring in new collectors.
I love it. Oh, we'll end it there. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Tiff. It is a special one. What you guys have built is special, and excited for what you and the team will continue to build at Magic Eden. And hopefully we'll continue to watch how many new users you bring in, and ultimately the culture that develops because of what Magic Eden has built. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.